You forgot that night.
The hair's okay, but the skirt, and the beard, the skirt and the beard. It's just, hello everybody, what a pleasure to be here. So, this is like the Rocky Horrors. You play the movie and then the actors come out and throw pumpkins or something. Just a little bit about the wrath of Khan. A little history that maybe I can, from my point of view, because I was there, share with you some of the. So, they decided to make a movie of Star Trek, and they hired a wonderful director for Star Trek One Robert Wise, and he was a famous director. He'd done some enormously important work, and he had never seen Star Trek. And his wife said, "You got to do it, Bob. You got to do it." And Bob Wise said, "I'll do it," and then he graced us with his talent. Paramount never was very sure about Star Trek. They wouldn't renew in the series every year. It was like, maybe we will, maybe we won't go on. And then they did 3 years, and then finally, with a sigh of relief, they said, "You're canceled." And everybody went their way. And it was like 6 or 7 years later when Star Wars became this big hit. And by now, the management of Paramount, which changes every studio changes every 4 or 5 years. It's like foliage, like lemmings. The lemmings eat all the food there, and they have to move somewhere to get more sustenance. So every 4 or 5 years, the heads of studios move on to another studio, and then they come around. It's like musical chairs. So the management had changed since the series, and now they said, do we have something that could equal Star Wars? And somebody said, there was this series on that got canceled after 3 years. It wasn't very popular, but they went, maybe we'll do a Star Trek, and get Bob Wise into, well, we're doing Star Trek, and they rushed into it, and Bob Wise was rushed into it, and the guy, the gentleman who did the special effects was rushed into it. What was his name?
Douglas Trumbull.
How do you know all this? I feel so stupid. Little Dougie Trumbull, yes, I remember. So he was the master, and he did the special effects, but everything was so rushed that the director never saw the special effects. Never saw them, and when they were put together to go into the film, he never had time to say, "Well, Dougie, you've done too much here, and let's cut a little here." And that was never happened. So the film, Star Trek One, the movie, was rushed to Washington, D.C., and they talk about the print being wet as like, that's how it literally was wet. It was like little drips going on. And they played it at what we opened in Washington, D.C., and we were all there, and it played, and I was forced to sit in the audience to look at myself, who had come back after 6 or 7 years of trying to look the same as I had been 6 or 7 years earlier. So the movie did quite well ultimately, but it wasn't like Star Wars. It didn't break it open. And so they said, all right, well, that's it. We're not going to make any more movies, that's it. And then the management changed. But especially the head of Paramount.
You stumped me.
It's just what I need. He would come from...
White guy?
Yeah. White guy, tall, about 6 foot. You got narrow it down?
Suit, right?
He had an accent. I'm not sure what that
Charles
accent.
Bloodhorn.
So, little Charlie Bloodhorn. It's not Bloodhorn, it's Bloodhorn. Bloodhorn is a different kind of movie. Charlie Bloodhorn and Vlad the Impaler, you know, come on. Charlie Bloodhorn ran Paramount Studios. So now the first movie doesn't make it, and they decide we're not going to make any more movies. Bloodhorn's wife was a big fan. And she said, Charlie, I'm not sleeping with you unless you make another movie. So thus began the Wrath of Khan. And several people had a try at the screenplay, but it was ultimately directed.
Robert Wise?
No, we're on another movie now.
Nick Meyer.
Follow me.
Sorry, I'm just mesmerized by you, sir. Sorry, Nick Meyer.
Nick Meyer.
Yeah.
Come on, stick with me. So ultimately it was Nick Meyer, who was and is a marvelous talent. He wrote and then ultimately directed this film. So that's like the background of the Wrath of Khan. Now, every so often I'm asked by some reporter, what question haven't you been asked? That is the dumbest bloody question that a reporter, what don't people know about you? That is ridiculous. How do I know what you don't know? So, where was I going with that?
You're not wrong with that one.
So the wife said, you got to make a movie. So they handed over to Nick Meyer. And Nick Meyer writes the script. I was going someplace with that previous statement, but I don't remember what it was. So Nick Meyer writes the script and directs it. I remember that. So the way it is when you get past 50. So I am in the midst, at that year, of doing a police series called what did you say? Wait a minute. No, wait a minute. Contractually, I had to be what they call in first place. I had to be at T.J. Hooker. And we were making the movie between the first and second season of T.J. Hooker. I had to be at a certain date on the set of T.J. Hooker, and I'm shooting The Wrath of Khan. I'm there one day, when somebody says, there's a fire on the set. Call the fire people. Get the engines. The Star Trek set is burning. And I'm thinking, what are you talking about? I gotta get to T.J. Hooker. I run down to the stage, and there's smoke. I only learned later that the smoke is toxic. And I see a garden hose, and I'm thinking, I gotta put this fire out, because I gotta get to T.J. Hooker. And the site, I have to repair it one day. I'm dead. A week, and I'm really dead. I'm fractured the contract, and I'm standing there pissing on this fire. And finally, the engines come, and the fire guys come in, and they take the hose from me, and they said, "You saved the thing from burning down." I said, "Don't thank me. Let's start shooting now." That was a little-known fact about. What haven't you been told about the Wrath of God? I put out a fire. And that began the success of the Wrath of Khan begat the reason we're all here. Otherwise, we'd be more about it. What else should I tell you about it? It's about genetic engineering. Science fiction, which, by the way, I've got a new book out. What's it called?
What's your book called?
What? Ask me that question again.
What's the title of your book?
What's the title of my book?
Yeah, what's the title of your
Zero
book?
G.
Zero G. Where can people find it?
Right now, in a bookstore, anywhere. Wherever we buy a book, there's a college town. You know where to find a book. Zero G is out there right now. It's a wonderful, fun read. But the best of science fiction, you notice that? The best of science fiction are those stories that have another meaning, a meaning that applies to us. So in Zero G, it's the FBI in space 50 years from now. Wrath of Khan is basically about the possibilities of genetic engineering. Many of us, many people, are concerned about foodstuffs that are genetically engineered. And I don't think we know the answer to that yet as to whether it's harmful or not. We know that genetically engineered crops are open to disease, and we need the wild crops to keep bringing in elements that would stop it from being diseased. But what does that do to people? I'm in the horse breeding business. We breed horses to each other for the characteristics we want. What does that mean in terms of human beings? And how will we deal with that in the future? Genetic engineering. That's essentially the basis of the Wrath of Khan. So that was another thing that was wrestled with, talked about on the set. The mystery and the future of genetic engineering. I'm done.
The best of Star Trek is thoughtful.
You gotta be thoughtful.
They expect it.
Yes, no, they gotta be thoughtful. What are you thinking?
Well, I want to talk about, origins and backgrounds. This is the 50th anniversary of Star Trek. If we were to go back in time 50 years this week.
50 years this week.
Where No Man Has Gone Before would have been playing on television. And that's the second pilot. That's your first episode you ever shot. Yeah. And I recently rewatched it, and it's terrific from beginning to end. But your first scene, it's you and Mr. Spock. You're playing three-dimensional chess. And from the very first scene, you have Captain Kirk down pat. There's no finding the character. You are that guy. Can you talk about finding Captain Kirk, how you came on and brought him immediately to life?
Well, you just said I didn't have to find him.
Did you do it? That's just it? You just were born that way?
The writing of the series is basically classical storytelling. The Greeks showed us how to make a well-made play, 3 acts, pose a question, try and resolve the question, resolution of question, character evolution, and the hero, which those of you who study literature know that that's a classical thing, the hero with a problem. My problem was Spock. The problem, the dilemma of the character is the basis of the well-made play. So here was a well-made play, written in all its various forms, to follow the classic storytelling devices of introducing your characters, the problem, the end of Act 2, what are you going to do? And the end of Act 3 is the resolution. Those are classical storytelling devices, of which Star Trek was a perfect example. And Captain Kirk was the perfect hero on the horns of a dilemma every week. Not unlike a good marriage. Some work, some don't work. That one doesn't work.
Like some marriages.
You just get a laugh. So that's the background. My background prior to coming into Star Trek was theater and classical theater, and I've been playing Shakespeare's for some years, but prior to that, and Broadway, and so there's an energy that you have to have in the theater that you don't have to have in movies, although sometimes it transfers from the screen to the audience. But great film acting doesn't require the force, the energy that a theater actor has, and sometimes people coming from the theater don't know that right away. That laughter is somewhat hysterical. So that's it. I played heroic figures prior to this, and it was essentially Captain Kirk, modeled on Captain Horatio Hornblower, a series of books that were out there about a British ship on a 5-year mission, I believe, to the unknown territories of America in the 1800s, I think, 1800s. So it was Captain Horatio Hornblower. C.M. Forrester wrote them, and I know that Roddenberry modeled the characters on those books.
You know, and obviously Gene Roddenberry is the great bird of the galaxy, the driving force behind Star Trek. But there are so many other great people who are involved that maybe for the 50th, it's nice to sort of spread some attention to them. People like Gene L. Kuhn or Robert Justman. Can you talk about working with some of these guys who I think also helped make Star Trek what it was?
Well, they more than helped. They made Star Trek. Gene Kuhn was an officer in the Marines. Somewhere where he must have been a writer beforehand, entered in World War II, became a Marine officer, I think captain, colonel, and had this military bearing, and wrote in a very economic fashion, so that every word meant something, would be ideal for an officer, a line officer who says things very emphatically and with staccato, and that's the way he wrote, laconically. He didn't waste words. Every word meant something, and that efficient writing in a movie is always the best, because it's the pictures that carry. It's the motion picture that carries the story, and the least number of words to get in the way is, in my opinion, ideal for everything. I mean, even in daily life, say what you mean and get out of the way. Right. A few of you agree, but you don't need everybody to agree with you. Anyway, Gene Kuhn gave Star Trek its style, and he was there for the second half of the first year and the first half of the second year. In effect, he was there for a season. He set the tone, and he was, in my opinion, the driving force behind the success of Star Trek. Again, I think a little known fact. And Bob Justman, it was the second name. Bob Justman was responsible for the production. We were given so little money to make those segments of Star Trek that using every dollar, like we would have to stop working at 6:18 in the evening. Why not 6:15 or 6:30? 6:18 because the union rules where you work so much and you get so much time off, and 6:18 was like the cutoff point where you'd have to pay overtime, and we couldn't afford overtime. So 6:18, you would pull the plug. So you had to get the shots, you had to get your day's work in, and if there was a delay, I mean, you think, for example, an actor is around, say me, and they said, all right, get Shatner on the set, and I'm on the phone, you know. Hey, honey, I don't know. I know I love you too, sweetheart. And, Bill, yeah, I'll be right there. And you do like 5 minutes. I'll be right there. I'm going to be right there. And you do 2, 3, 4 minutes, and then you come on the set. Multiply that by every setup. Say there's 10 setups. You're talking 30, 40, 50 minutes. You've lost an hour that day just by being slow to come on the set. An hour a day, 7 days, you've almost lost a day. You've almost lost a day of shooting because you came to the set, but you finished the phone call. That's how exacting Bob Justman's job was, to make every dollar count for, special effects. Our marvelous special effects. They were so bad now. You know, that's why, in my opinion, the Star Trek movies today are doing so well, because the special effects have made such a leap, an artistic leap of entertainment. We're there on a ride. We're there. We see what it's going to look like, at least according to somebody's imagination, what it's going to look like 300 years from now, what the buildings, what the engineering is going to be like, what you're capable of doing 300 years from now. We see it on the screen, whereas we in the television show would say, oh, you should see what we're going to look like 300 years from now.
So charming, though.
What?
It was so charming, though.
Who is?
The special effects.
Oh, I thought you meant
special. Well, that goes without saying.
What do you mean charming?
Well, I think that there's a sense of the special effects that are they're imaginative. People working around limitations. I think that makes it more exciting and interesting. With a computer, you can show anything.
What a wonderful word. That's a perfect word to use.
Which one? Sorry, I got another laugh. I didn't mean to.
How charming. The word charming. Applied to special effects. I mean, I've never heard it before, but it's a wonderful word to use on those special effects, because there was so little money and there was so little technology that they're charming. I did a Twilight Zone in which a Czechoslovakian acrobat in a little furry suit was on a wing of a plane. That is charming.
Charming as hell. So about this movie that we're about to watch.
Oh, yes.
So one of the things I love about this movie is that Captain Kirk and Khan never actually share a scene together. You're always talking via the screens. Can you talk about, did you and Montalban at all get together during the making of this movie? Did you guys hang out, or did you do the method thing and say really just
how much are we getting restless?
No!
No, I mean, our time is limited. I know, because I had something to say that might take a couple minutes.
Do it!
So, in thinking about what to say in front of all of you, I mean, you can imagine how intimidating it can be to face an audience and not know what you're going to say next. And the worry is the Freudian slip. I didn't mean to say that. I'm so sorry. So, what I thought of on my way here was tombstones. Some people put the picture of a beloved on a tombstone. So you see, you go to a graveyard and you see pictures of somebody whose likeness is on the tombstone, who's now moldering in their grave. they no longer look like that. But there is this real life picture of this person who's dead. And I've been fascinated by that because, you know, it's like trying to hold a moment in time. I love you and you're gone, but for this moment, as long as the picture lasts, in the weather, I'll hold on to the memory, and I can see this, and as the years go by, and the picture fades, and everything is fading, the memory is fading, and the picture is fading, the memory of the person is gone, and finally it's gone, and just as well, the person is dust and gone forever, and like, you know, with no record of them being here. But on a film like this, where Ricardo Montalban, Leonard Nimoy, DeForest Kelley, and many, many others are dead, their likeness is like that picture on the tombstone. Here is the Wrath of Khan memorializing those wondrous people. Now, I don't mean this to be funny. I wrote a book called Leonard, in which I talk about my deep and abiding friendship with Leonard Nimoy. But with Ricardo Montalban, it was also strange and for me, unforgettable. When I was a kid, I had to be very young. I made a trip from Montreal, Canada, where I was born, to New York City to see Broadway shows. And I went to see, I don't remember why, a Broadway show that was a musical. And there was a young man dancing beautifully there. And I don't have any idea why I would remember this young Latin dancer in this musical. Some years go by, I make it to Hollywood, and I meet a wonderful, now an established Latin actor from Mexico, I think. Was he, do you know? I think it was from Mexico. So here is this wonderful looking man who now is walking with a slight limp. And I said, oh, Mr. Montalban, I remember you in Jamaica or something. And he said, yes, I was a dancer. And then I had a horse accident, and I hurt my hip, and I haven't been able to dance since. I had this limp, and this was before hip replacements and stuff like that. He's walking with a slight limp, this marvelous athlete. So I know him vaguely. I've forgotten why at that moment. And then I meet him all those years later when he does the series. The Wrath of Khan is based on a segment. What was the name of the segment?
Space Seed.
Space Seed. So I meet this sort of like a hero of mine, now an older man, on Space Seed, and now he's not just limping, he is crippled up. But being the athlete he was, he worked his upper body, and he had this wonderful physique that he was keeping himself as best he could tuned to what he had been as this handsome leading man. Now he plays in Space Seed. Some years later, the Wrath of Khan. And what he had done by that time was work his pecs to such a degree that people would stand back in amazement. Good God! Ricardo, those pectorals! He became, I can't say a friend, but a real acquaintance. And I went up to see him from time to time at his beautiful home in the hills in Hollywood. And we talked about theater and him and things that were meaningful to actors. And I had the best time with him and mourned his death when he died. He died crippled up. The disease, or whatever it was, the arthritis, whatever it was that he had in his body, crippled him, and it was so sad to see this great athlete, this dancer, in this humbled position, and yet at the same time, you recognize the spirit of the human being who could try and prevail over what fate had decreed on him. His spirit always was high and forward and positive. He was a great man, and this film is his mark. This is the picture.